Odin,
Yes.
you seeing the screen?
Coming. Yes, I'm seeing you. I'm seeing you. I'm not seeing a video.
Good evening, sir.
Okay, what we want to... Okay, do we have any questions arising from last week? Giovanni, do you have any questions arising from last week?
No, sir. I'm pretty much okay.
Okay, Colette, do you have any?
No, sir.
Pardon?
No, not at the moment.
Okay. Anybody else with any questions?
I'm good.
Antoinette, do you have any questions?
Sir, I was having some technical difficulties the last class. I wasn't able to actually be in the entire lecture.
Okay, well, what I'm going to say, it's now posted on OUR VLE.
Yes, sir,
So,
I know.
Right, so what I want you to do, I want you to review so that by the next time we meet, we can have a meaningful discussion. I don't want you waiting until the last minute because the mid-semester will be up on you and we don't want any problems.
Sir, I know I'd actually reached out to Olivine after the classes to let her know, and she said that she would have put them up, which she did. So I'll be reviewing.
Just giving it till next week to ensure that everything is okay. Okay, so yes, Chanel Coates. Is Chanel here or is she absent?
Sir, I'm here.
Okay. Do you have any questions arising from last week?
No, sir, I didn't.
you understand. So you can sit the test later on today then. If I set a test on break-even analysis, you could sit it and pass it. That's
Yes,
what we're
sir.
saying. Okay. Who's B word? That's who's B word?
That's Belinda Ward.
Okay. Any questions, Belinda, arising from last week?
I understood it as you presented it. I think what I need to do now is try and cement it.
Okay, so they're past paper questions, and with similar questions like this. So what you can do, don't wait until exam coming around. Look at the past paper questions, and as we work a topic, use that as your practice to cement your understanding.
Yes.
Certainly, I'm available to answer any questions that you might have.
The past paper questions are also posted in our VLE.
Okay, you're hearing that, class? So what it means is that you can have a look at them, pick out the area that we've covered so far, which is break-even analysis, and work the questions. Don't wait till the last minute and blame the lecturer and say the lecturer is a bad one.
Okay.
Do those things.
Excuse me,
So
sir,
don't do it.
for
Yes.
the practice, for the past papers, answer sheets are there that we can at least check that?
I didn't hear that.
For the past papers that are on OUR VLE, I'm just wondering if the answer sheet is there that we can at least check back to know if we're on.
No, there's no answer. There's no answer. If you have an issue with the question, then you can get in touch with me. You can speak to me about it. We can have a class. I can reserve an evening where we do revision around certain areas. So work the questions in between, and then we can do a revision where we look back on what we've done and any questions that you have surrounding what you've worked that I have taught so far, they can be answered. Are you hearing me?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay. So anybody with any questions before I move on to the new topic? I want to take them now and deal with them.
I will catch up over the weekend and get back to you.
Okay.
Yeah, I need to catch up.
Okay. Please be faithful in our workings on a weekly basis. Let us not wait till it pile up, and then when mid-semester we have all sort of hard luck story, which I won't listen to anyway. I won't listen to the hard luck story after the fact. I listen to them before. Afterwards, we're not listening. So please.
Okay, sir, I'm gonna work on it.
Sir.
I'm gonna work on it, sir.
Please do. Please.
Yes.
Sir?
Yes. Who is this now speaking?
Giovanni. This is Giovanni now, sir.
Okay, yes. Go ahead, please.
Are we gonna discuss the last two answers though of the question?
Okay, you know that there's a solution for it.
I know, but
okay, so what I want you to do, you read through the solution, did you?
yes, I did.
So we can, certainly we can have a discussion on it, which you might want to raise.
Okay.
Yes, so what you want to say about it? Okay, so we're talking about the question, what are some of the decisions that a company can make to reduce its operating costs? You're talking about that question?
Well, I was actually talking about the last one. How can profits be maximized through the use of sales mix?
Now, what exactly? The operative word in such a question is sales mix.
Mm-hmm.
And sales mix people, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I did the research, found the definition, and such, but I just wanted to kind of see if I was on the right track.
Okay, so let's share what you have. Let's hear.
Right. So Let me get to it. So I have that sales mix is a calculation that determines the proportion of each product a business sells relative at total sales. So the sales mix is significant because some products or service may be more profitable than others. So is it that because of the sales mix, because it shows which product makes more profit than others, then companies can zoom in more to say boost sales in a given product?
That's correct.
Okay.
So what we're doing, remember, I want to take you back to that first concept that we met, which was in question 1, calculate the contribution margin ratio.
Yes.
Now, that's the operative thing, contribution margin ratio. You want to sell more of the products with a higher rather than lower contribution margin ratio. That's what you want to do. So you would try to market the products that have a higher contribution margin ratio. Sell more of those products that have a high contribution margin ratio and less of the ones with a lower contribution margin ratio. So you would push to the maximum the products with a higher contribution margin ratio, and then you go down the line. Next highest, and so on.
Okay, sir.
That product with a contribution margin ratio of 20% and one with a contribution margin ratio of 13%, you'd want to sell more of the one with 20%.
Yes, sir. Okay, I got it, sir.
Yeah. And the sales mix is a proportion of products. So if I'm selling 70,000 settees and 140,000 dining tables, I have a 1 to 2. In other words, what that is saying is that I'm selling twice as many chairs as I sell dining tables. The mix is a proportion of each that I'm selling.
Okay.
Class, are you following what we're saying?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Class, I want to underscore the importance of asking questions in class. Don't sit silently and only get boisterous when the results are out.
Sir, I have a question.
Pardon?
I have a question, please.
Go ahead, please.
So, okay, going back to what you just explained, if it is that, no, the question is, so would it also impact, apart from just the marketing of the product, would it also impact on the company's decision in relation to the inputs? So how much they would budget for like material, labor?
But clearly, if you plan to sell more, you're going to have to produce more. And in producing more, you're going to need more resources to produce, assuming that you're producing it.
Right. Well, I was more thinking if it is that it makes you, well, I guess it's sort of the same thing, but it would make you decide to put more of your money, to invest more then in the production of this particular thing because it sells, it has a higher contribution margin.
You're speaking wisdom. That's correct. You want to invest more. So if it means investing more in the production platform or enhancing the production platform, because what happens when you enhance the production platform, you invariably end up doing, it ends up resulting in a product that becomes cheaper to produce.
Yes. A
more modern production platform is that your unit costs of production go down because of the efficiencies that come with it. When you have an old machine, sometimes it will take the raw materials in and destroy it because it's malfunctioning. And then you have to put more raw materials in. So you end up putting in probably twice or thrice the raw materials that you had planned to put in, 3 times more than the plan. That has a cost to the company. That has a cost to the company. But you can only recoup the price once, but 3 times the cost went in. That can happen when you have old production, an old production platform. When you upgrade your platform, then efficiencies arise from it. And those efficiencies represent lower costs, and lower costs, all things being equal and constant, give rise to a higher contribution. But I just want to say that, remember that contribution is equal to what? Sales minus variable cost. And mathematically, we know that when the variable cost goes down, the contribution rises. And when the contribution rises, the contribution margin ratio is higher.
Yes.
Are you clear on that?
Yes, sir.
Okay. What I'm going to suggest, I think that the class last week was driven by a number of formulae. So in order to get them clear in your head, get the cards, the flashcards, and write out each of the formulas. So there's a formula for contribution margin ratio. Contribution per unit divided by selling price, all multiplied by 100. And you might want to make the note that it is to be expressed as a percentage. Doing over the lecture for those who weren't here, contribution margin ratio is the contribution per unit divided by the selling price, and we're multiplying by 100 because it is going to be expressed as a percentage. Those of you who weren't here, take down the pen and write it down. And then, so let me say it again, the contribution margin ratio is contribution per unit divided by the selling price multiplied by 100. And just to remind you all, your contribution per unit, if you're looking at the problem, is $42. See that? And your selling price is $210. So we're therefore looking at $42 divided by 210 multiplied by 100, and that gives us 20%. What is that saying? It's more than a number. It means that my contribution is 20% of my selling price. Whatever my selling price is, the 210, if we go back and check the maths, 20% of 210 is 42. 20% of 210 is 42. Okay, so the other formula that I would want you to copy, reflect on a flashcard, is the break-even point in units, and later on the break-even point in sales. The break-even point in units is equal to fixed costs divided by contribution per unit. That's the break-even point. How many units do I need to sell to just be at that marginal point, that point of the threshold? I want to call the break-even point no man's land. And by no man's land, we mean you're neither making a profit or a loss. You're neither making a profit nor a loss at the break-even point. And we're interested in that point, not because we want to produce units equal to the break-even units, but it tells us that we cannot go below that point. So if I do a market survey, and the market survey shows that I can only produce, there's only demand for 16,000 units and no more. And I have done my break even, and you'll remember from last week that it was 18,000 units. What would be the clear message about this product? That I should collect? What is the message that would come from this?
Sir, sorry, can you repeat the question, please?
Yes, I'm saying that suppose we did our market survey, and the market survey showed that there was a demand for 17,000 units. But when we did our break-even analysis, it showed that our break-even number of units was 18,000 units. What would your response be? And I ask these questions because they're real questions that you might be sitting at a table to answer, or you're a part of the management team and they're talking about these things and you need to appreciate it. Even though you're not the finance person, you need to appreciate what is being said. So what would your response be? The market says that they can only take 17,000 units. There's a demand only for 17,000 units, but the break-even point is 18,000. Should you go ahead and produce the 17,000 units?
It would seem as if you would be operating at a loss, because if the demand—
That's correct. You would be operating at a loss, because if you produce and sell 17,000 units, it is below the break-even point. And when we produce below the break-even point, we make a loss. At the break-even point, the profit is zero. And above the break-even point, the profit would be, there would be a profit. The contribution is that amount of the revenues in excess of the variable cost. And last week we said that the contribution is supposed to be large enough to cover the fixed costs,
and
have something left over for profits. Okay. So your break-even point in units is fixed costs divided by contribution per unit. Fixed costs divided by contribution per unit. That's break-even point in units. Now, break-even point in dollars is break-even point in units multiplied by the selling price. Break-even point in units, in dollars, is break-even point in units multiplied by the selling price. But we can interpret that another way. We can say that the break-even point in dollars is really the revenues that we earn when we sell the break-even number of units. When I sell 18,000 units, what is the revenue that I make? And how do I find it out? By simply looking at my break-even in units and multiplying it by the selling price. Okay, we also met the concept of the margin of safety, embodied in part 4 of the question, the margin of safety. And the margin of safety speaks to, in the context of the question, it says, if the company normally produces and sells 25,000 units, calculate the margin of safety in units and in dollars. So what we're doing in this context is generating a formula for this. And the formula for this is the units normally produced and sold minus the break-even units. That is the margin of safety in units. And the margin of safety in units is the number of units that we produce in excess of the break-even point. The number of units that we produce and sell that exceed the break-even point. So in this question, it said that you normally produce and sell 25,000 units. But my break-even point we established was 18,000 units. So the margin of safety in units would be 25,000 units minus 18,000 units. And that would give me a margin of safety in units of 7,000. 25,000 units minus 18,000 units would give me 7,000 units. And then the margin of safety in dollars is margin of safety in units multiplied by the selling price. Margin of safety in units multiplied by the selling price. $7,000 multiplied by $210 would give you $1,470,000. That is your margin of safety in dollars. Margin of safety in units multiplied by the selling price. Are we there, or are we going to sleep?
We're there, sir.
Okay.
Just to interpret it though, sir.
Okay.
For the margin of safety in units, it goes back to what you had at Colette about the 17,000. So if my sales drop below 18, that means that I'm gonna
make a loss.
Make a loss. Yes, sir.
Yes.
So for the dollars now, would the margin of safety in dollars mean that I would have to lose? I would have to be at a loss of 1.470.
Well, if my sales revenue falls below $1,470,000, I'll be making a loss.
Okay, understood, sir.
If it falls below, and if it is currently at the break-even sales and it rises above that, then well, once it rises above the break-even in dollars, I'm making a profit.
Sir, I'm sorry. You said if it falls below.
Okay, I just like to identify who is speaking.
This is Tremaine.
Okay, Tremaine. Yes.
Yeah. So you're saying if it falls below 1,470,000.
No, if it falls, no, sorry. If the revenue falls by 1,470,000 or more, if it falls by 1,470,000 or more, then it will, you're making a loss.
Okay, so in this scenario, it would be safe to say that the 1,470,000 is your profit.
No, it's not the profit because we have not yet covered variable costs and fixed costs out of it.
Okay, so this is where you would have taken your other costs.
The extra variable costs and any fixed costs that wasn't covered.
Okay.
In fact, at the break-even point, you've covered all your fixed costs. So all you'll be taking out of the extra revenues is the variable costs. Because remember, fixed cost speaks for itself. It doesn't grow with the additional units produced. Am I speaking English? Hello?
Just say that over one more.
Yes, I'm saying that with the fixed costs don't move with the number of units that you sell. It stays fixed. The cost that will grow with the number of units that you sell, or reduce by the number of units that you don't, by that you fall off by, will be the variable cost. Variable cost moves with the number of units produced. So the more units I produce, the greater my variable cost. The less units I produce and sell, the lower my variable cost. But my fixed cost remains constant.
Okay.
Think about it. The more times the more miles you travel, the greater your gas bill. Are you there?
Yes, yes, yes.
Yes, sir.
I'm just giving an example of how you look at a variable cost. Your car, the gas that you pay that is used in the vehicle, that cost is a variable cost. The more miles you travel, the more that you spend on gas. Agreed?
Yes, sir.
But tell me, the more miles you travel, does it affect your insurance, the insurance that you pay on your vehicle?
No.
No, sir.
So insurance is a fixed cost. Insurance is a fixed cost. Or if we want to look at it in the context of production, the more units you produce, the more oil you use in your machine.
Correct.
But does it mean that you pay more insurance with the more units that you produce? The greater units that you produce, do you pay more insurance on your assets?
No, sir.
No, you don't. Okay, so the other formula that we would want is reflected in note 5, or requirement 5. If the company wishes to report net income of 252,000 units, how many units, $252,000, sorry, how many units must be sold to achieve this target? If the company wishes to report net income of $252,000, how many units must be sold to achieve this target? Intuitively, would my answer be less than 18,000 or more than 18,000? I'm not yet asking you for an answer, but would the answer be 18,000, less than 18,000, or more than 18,000?
More, sir.
Not hearing?
More, sir.
Sorry, can you speak a little louder, please?
I think it would be more.
It would be more. Oh, this is Debbie, yes, it would be more. It would be more, because once we're talking about profits,
Yes.
it means that we have to be producing above the break-even point, which we established was 18,000. So when we talk about profits, it must be more than 18,000 units. So what's the formula for requirement 5? The formula for requirement 5 would be fixed costs, which is $756,000, plus the required profit, which is $252,000, divided by contribution per unit, which is $42. Fixed costs, which is $756,000, plus the net income, which is $252,000, divided by $42, which is the contribution per unit. Fixed costs plus required profit divided by contribution per unit. And I think we should get $24,000. 24,000, sorry, units, 24,000 units. When you sell 24,000 units, you will make a profit of $252,000. And when you do the maths, as we did last week, you'll see exactly that. You have a question, Debbie?
No, sir.
Giovanni, do you have a question?
No, sir, I don't.
Okay. Okay. So let us, with your permission, move to question 2. And again, you're going to need your flashcards for that. So Just tell the ground commander this evening that I sent you out on the road and you're only going to the pharmacy, and you're going to the pharmacy to get the flashcards. Tell the ground commander that I sent you. And
can you do the one with the reduction in variable cost percentage for reduction in variable cost?
okay, that one doesn't have a strict formula, but the principle, we can discuss the principle. The principle in that one is that they told you that your variable cost per unit was reduced to $112. And when we're looking at requirement 3, class, for the benefit of the class, we're looking at requirement 3, which says, what must the new selling price be if the company's variable cost per unit is reduced to $112 after a process reengineering exercise, and the mandate is given that the contribution margin ratio should remain intact. Now, the principle is that if my variable cost per unit changes and everything else remains the same, then my contribution per margin ratio will change. If my, let me say that again, if my variable cost per unit changes, then my contribution per unit will change and my contribution margin ratio will also change.
Sir, say that over one last time, please.
If my variable cost per unit changes with the selling price being the same, then it means that my contribution per unit will change. It won't be 42 anymore. And if I were to recompute my contribution per unit, sorry, my contribution margin ratio, it would be changed as well.
Okay.
Why don't we test that? What's my new variable cost per unit? Based on the question, what's the new variable cost per unit?
112.
112. So if we have a selling price of 210 and a variable cost per unit of 112, what is my contribution per unit?
98.
98.
Can't hear you, sir.
Pardon? It's 98. You heard that?
No, I still haven't heard you, sir.
It's 98.
Yes, sir.
It's 98. Okay. Now, we knew that before the contribution margin ratio was 20%. Calculate the new contribution margin ratio. I made some statements, so we're proving that what I said is true. The first thing I said, if my variable cost per unit changes, then the contribution per unit will change. And we proved that a while ago. It's no longer 42, but 98. The next thing we want to prove that if the variable cost per unit changes, then the contribution margin ratio will change. In other words, it won't be 20% anymore, but what would it be? That's what I want.
46.6%.
46.67%.
Yes, sir.
46.67%. Class, are you following what we're doing? I want you to do the maths with me, make the journey with me. Don't just listen to one student. I hope your calculators are out so that you're doing the work. Class, because I can't see you, I'm depending on you. I'm depending on you to do the work. And if I'm going too fast, let me know. Slow me down. I don't know how fast I'm going until you tell me. But if you're silent, then you have only yourself to blame. Have we worked the contribution margin ratio based on the new figures? Can I have a response from the class?
Yes,
Open up your mics and tell me. I hope we're all paying attention and we're not being distracted at home. Listen, I mark a register, you know, so if I don't get an answer, that person is absent. And by the attendance, you're invited to the mid-semester. Listen, absent. Daniel Coward.
Yes, sir.
Yes, Daniel.
Yes, sir.
Okay. I don't see a mic opened up though. Daniel Coward.
Because my background is noisy, sir.
Okay. Okay, I see it now opened up, yes. Just to ask you, what did you get for your contribution margin ratio?
The contribution margin ratio was 33.33%.
Sorry, I'm not hearing you.
33.33%.
You got 33.33. Based on the new figures that we spoke to? Based on the new figures we spoke to, you got 33.33. What are the new figures, Daniel? What's the selling price in the question?
Selling price is 112.
The selling price is... Pardon?
The new selling price.
I didn't ask you about a new selling price. What's the selling price given them the problem?
Oh, the selling price is 210.
Selling price is how much?
210.
210. And what is the new variable cost based on the question?
112.
112. Next question. What is the contribution per unit based on those figures?
It's 98, sir.
98, that's correct. The next question I'm going to ask you is calculate the contribution margin ratio in that new context.
The contribution margin ratio?
That's correct, yes.
Okay, 1 second. $46.67.
Sorry,
I'm not sure.
Can you just say that louder, please?
46.67.
36 or 46?
46.
46.67, that's correct. 46.67, that's correct. What was it before? What was it before? What was the contribution margin ratio? Pardon?
Before it was 33.33.
Oh, you got 33.33.
I'm just looking back at my notes that I had.
Oh, you got it. That's what I asked you.
Right, so it's the variable cost per unit minus the.
Look back at the notes and tell me what I told you the contribution margin ratio was, the formula for it.
The contribution cost per unit divided.
The contribution margin ratio, yes, go ahead.
So it would be the contribution per unit divided by
contribution per unit
divided by the selling price.
Okay, so contribution per unit divided by the selling price. Is that all?
That's all I have.
Did I say multiply by 100 to express it as a percentage?
Yes.
Did I say that?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Okay, and what would that give you? What would be the result of that calculation?
So the contribution margin ratio would be 36.67%.
30, what?
Sir, can move on, please. Thank you.
Pardon?
Can you move on, please?
The answer to that is no. The answer to that is no. It is patently clear you're not understanding, and I'm not going to leave you behind. We can't go on to Montego Bay and leave you falling off the truck onto Flatbridge. So I have some questions for you.
I will get it in my own time. You don't need to worry.
No. That can't be a response in this class. That cannot be a response in this class. So I have some questions for you, which I'm sure you'll answer. The contribution per unit, you said, in the old scenario, you said, you're quite right, 42 divided by, you said 210. And what did that give you?
Sir, it's 20%.
Sorry, what you said?
It's 20%.
No, just speak a little louder. 42.
Sir, it's 20%.
Okay, yes, I'm hearing that. No, yes, 20%. That's correct. Now, remember you calculated another one when we had changed the selling price, sorry, the variable cost. You had a new contribution margin ratio, which was 46.67%. So we have proven that when you change your variable costs, two things happen. Your contribution per unit will change. Before you change it, it was $42. Now it became $98. And something else happens. The contribution margin ratio changes. Before it was 20%. Before the change, it was 20%. And after the change, it was 46.67%. So what I did, I made the statements and I went back to the figures to prove what I said. When the variable cost per unit changes, the contribution per unit will change and the contribution margin ratio will change. So the question recognizes that, but it says that it wants to keep it the same. And keeping it the same means that even though the variable cost per unit changes, how can the variable cost per unit change and yet we will have contribution margin ratio, which has not changed? And the simple response is that the percentage reduction in our variable cost, the percentage reduction in our variable cost, whatever that is, the selling price must reduce by that percentage as well. The selling price must be reduced by that percentage as well. So Daniel, last week I gave you a formula about a reduction in the variable cost. Can you go back to that note, please? Daniel, are you there?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Yes. How do we reduce? How do I find what is the percentage reduction in variable costs?
Sir, can you repeat what you said, please?
How do we find the percentage reduction in variable costs? I gave you a formula last week. Go back to that formula, please.
Sir, I'm not seeing that in my notes, so I'm not sure.
Pardon, say that again, please.
Sir, I must have missed that because I'm not seeing it in my notes. So I don't know if I'll send something or what.
Colette Richards.
Sir?
Yes. Tell me what is the, how do I find the percentage reduction in variable costs per unit?
All right, so I have old figure minus the new figure divided by the old figure times 100.
Okay, that's correct. Okay, you heard that, Daniel?
Yes, sir.
The old figure minus the new figure divided by the old figure multiplied by 100. So I'm going to invite you, Daniel, to put those figures in your calculator and tell me what the reduction would be in variable cost. Let me walk you through it. What's your old figure for variable cost per unit?
168.
168,
168, sir.
Daniel, not hearing you.
168.
That's correct. And what's the new figure?
112.
112.
12.
It's breaking off, Daniel.
112, sir.
That's right, 112. Divided by the old figure. So your old figure is how much? Have you worked out the figure now, Daniel?
Yes, sir.
Okay, what did we get as a percentage reduction?
33.33%.
Or as a percentage, it would be what?
As a 33.33%.
That's right. Okay, so your variable costs fell by 33.33%. Your variable cost per unit fell by 33.33%. Your selling price must also fall by that percentage as well. So if your selling price falls by 33.33%, what will the new selling price be equal to?
$140.
$140. That's correct. $140. Now, when we put the new sets of figures together and recompute the contribution margin ratio, you will see that it is still 20% as it was in the old scenario. I'm going to invite you to do that before I invite you to go back to sit. Your new selling price is 140. Your new variable cost per unit is $112. What is your contribution per unit in the context of those new figures? What is your contribution per unit?
So it's 28, sir.
How much?
28.
28, that's right. And what is your contribution margin ratio with working with those new figures? What's your new contribution margin ratio working with those new figures? So what's the contribution margin ratio working with those figures? Daniel, we're still with you.
What did you say, sir?
I'm asking you, based on the new sets of figures, what is your contribution margin ratio? Daniel? Daniel, we're waiting. Daniel? I think that this is a good time to break. We take a 10-minute break. We're going to take the 10-minute break. And when we come back, I'm going to make a statement. And then we're going to proceed to question 2. So we're going to break now. Let's call it 7 o'clock. And we're going to come back at 10 minutes after 7. Okay, are you hearing that, class?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Okay.
sir.
10 minutes after 7, I'll make a statement about the conduct of the class, and then we will move on to question 2. Being taped, so so she can get it. Okay, so we're on to standard costing now, and a standard is about expectations. A standard is about expectations. It isn't reality, but we set a standard about many things. We had a standard. We wanted the class to resume at 7:10. That's a standard. It either did or it didn't. So let's suppose that it resumed at 7:12. There's a variance between the time that we intended, which is a standard, and what actually happened. So when we look at standards, it segues into the concept of variances. Expectation versus actual gives us the variance. Now there are 8 variances that we're going to look at, and I'm going to name them. I'm going to go through each of them step by step. We're going to go through each of them step by step. There are 8 variances. And if you turn over to question 2 that you see reflected on the screen, we are going to, and we look at part A of the question, direct material usage variance. The direct material usage variance looks at what we expected to use in terms of materials versus what we actually used. And that is focus. We focus on the actual output. We focus on the actual output. What should we have used to make the actual output versus what we actually used? So a usage variance is about looking at the expected and the actual. Now I want you to take a note from me, please. 2 things I want you to note. A variance will be ultimately measured in dollars. A variance will be ultimately measured in dollars. That's the first thing I want you to note. And the second thing that I want you to note is a variance will be either adverse or favorable. We never write a variance without placing a capital A for adverse, or a capital F for favorable. Capital A for adverse, or a capital F for favorable. Adverse means something bad. We've heard the term adverse weather conditions. We're talking about bad weather conditions. So how can we apply that to the direct material usage variance? If I have used actually more materials than I plan to use, then it means that I have an adverse material usage variance. And if I use less materials, my actual is less than what I plan to use, then that is a favorable usage variance. Did you get that, class?
No, sir.
Think about baking and using flour. That's material for cake. The recipe says that you must use 2 pounds of flour. Suppose you end up using 5. Would that be a good thing or a bad thing?
A bad thing.
Bad thing.
Very bad thing.
It would be a bad thing. You have used more. The standard would be the recipe, and the recipe says you must use 2. But suppose in the process you end up using 5 pounds of flour, because maybe 2 turned over or 2 had weevil in it. When you pour out the first 3 pounds, weevil in it, and then you put in another 2, it means that you ended up using 5 pounds of flour on the exercise. 3 of them had to be thrown away, or 3 pounds of it spilled. So in the exercise, you'd have used 5 pounds of flour. Not all of it in the cake, but you used more for the exercise than you had planned to use. And I heard you all saying that that's an adverse variance. Can we see why that would be a bad thing to use more than the plan? That is adverse?
You'd be wasting resources.
Wasting resources, yes.
And it's outside the standard.
It's outside of the standard. So if we use more than the plan, then it means that it's an adverse thing, it's bad. And if we use less than the plan, we use less resources than the plan, that's a good thing. Is that clear before I build a little further?
Yes, sir.
Sir,
So just for clarity, you said if you use less than planned, it's favorable.
Favorable.
If you use equal to what you planned,
Okay.
is it still favorable?
There's no variance, because if you use what you plan to use, then there's no variance. A variance means a difference.
Oh, so it's zero.
It to be zero, and in zero we have neither adverse nor favorable.
I see.
So
But
in
so
other words,
wouldn't using less would be less than the standard then?
maybe it is of a higher standard, so you don't need as much as, but you've used less than.
Sorry, could I ask a question?
Yes, go ahead.
You had, well, did I hear you say that you always express this in dollars? Did I hear that? So
yes,
I think that what is important then too is that if you use more, you're wasting dollars. Use more, it costs more. And if you use less, you've saved money. So the cost is less.
The cost will be less. So you're using
What do you
resources,
factor in,
you're using more resources if you've used more, and you're using less resources. The general principle is that in anything that you're doing, you want to use less resources. You want to use less light in the classroom. You want to use less AC. So the general principle is that you want to use less resources. And our materials.
But I wanted to keep quality in mind.
Okay,
or
but
we don't focus on quality here.
Okay, we're not measuring quality in usage. We're measuring what materials. Of course, a wider discussion can now be developed around what impact does using more or using less have on quality.
Right.
Don't they say you have a priori conditions?
But remember now, what we're measuring is usage. So we're taking the factors one at a time. And so it is true that a favorable variance in one area can impact something adversely. When we get to labor, we can take some people, we can take unskilled workers, and pay them a lower rate to do the job. And what will happen is that we will have a favorable labor rate variance, but it could affect usage because these untrained workers, we pay them less and we have a favorable labor rate variance. But guess what happens? They affect the usage. They throw away the material, they don't know how to use it. So my direct material usage variance could be adverse. So an adverse variance, a favorable variance in one area can cause another variance to be adverse. But the issue is we're measuring one thing at a time. Are we there?
Yes, sir.
Okay, let's take them one at a time. We have 8 variances and we're going to start with the direct material usage variance. And I want to take a formula. I want to take a formula and use it to look at the direct material usage variance. I want to give you a formula in words, and then we're going to apply numbers to the words, and then we're going to ultimately work out the variance. So the direct, I want you to write, and if you're not hearing me, just indicate that you're not hearing. I don't want to leave anybody behind.
Sir, before you start, you said that these figures that we're looking at are variances.
We're going to calculate.
Sir, you muted your mic.
Yes.
Can you repeat your response? I didn't hear you.
Yes. Ask your question again, please.
I'm asking if these figures that we're looking at on screen, did you say that they're variances?
No, no, no. There's information that we're going to use to calculate the variance. So this is a problem, and we're going to use this problem to calculate the variance.
Okay, sir.
Yes, okay. Okay, so we have the figures. We're looking at the question, and the first variance we're going to calculate is the direct material usage variance. Direct material usage variance. And the formula is this. Standard usage for actual production, open brackets first of all, open brackets. Standard usage for actual production standard usage for actual production minus actual usage, close brackets, multiplied by standard rate per pound, multiplied by standard rate per pound. I'm going to say it again. The direct material usage variance is standard usage for actual production. The open bracket, of course, standard usage for actual production minus actual usage, close brackets, multiplied by standard rate per pound.
Per what?
Standard rate per pound. Standard rate per pound. You heard that, Colette?
Yes, I did.
Okay, great. So now we're going to just put the words and relate them to the figures. Before I go on to look at the formula, I just want to interpret this line at the top. Direct materials, 12 pounds at $28 per pound, and we have 336 on here. Direct materials, we expect the information at the top relates to what we expect to use to make 1 unit of whatever we're making. So if we're making tables, to make 1 table, we expect to use 12 pounds of material. And each pound, we expect that it will cost us $28. What's the material cost to make 1 table? What do we expect it to be? 12 times 28, which is 336. 12 times 28, which is 336.
Sir, and this is the cost to make 1 table, that 336.
We expect, that's not the cost, we expect that to be the cost.
Okay.
This information at the top is the expected information. We're going to move down into the actual later on. But what we have at the top is the expected information. So let's just interpret materials again, and I'm going to pause to invite your questions. The information at the top with respect to direct materials is interpreted this way. We expect that to make 1 table, or if it's chairs, 1 chair, 1 whatever we're making, we expect to use 12 pounds of material. And we expect that each pound will cost us $28. We therefore expect that the cost of the materials to make 1 table or 1 chair or 1 whatever, 1 unit, will be $336. How did we get that? 12 times 28. 12 times 28, 336. Is that explanation clear, class?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Let's continue in the same vein with our materials at the bottom. We move down where we see the concept of direct materials reported again. And down there, we're seeing £725,000 costing $14.5 million. £725,000 of material costing $14,500,000. Now, this is the actual. This is the actual information for the companies given below. This is the actual information. And what we're saying is this. I have produced 60,000 pounds. And in producing 60,000, sorry, I produced 60,000 units. And remember, units is a generic term. Units can be anything. It could be chairs, tables, tiles, whatever. We've produced 60,000 units. And in producing 60,000 units, I have used £725,000 of material. And the £725,000 of material cost me $14,500,000. The question is this. What is the direct material usage variance? Open brackets. If we go back to the top, what's my standard usage, class? What's my standard usage?
336.
No, 336 is not usage, that's a cost of the material. What's my standard usage?
12 pounds.
12 pounds, that's right. And we're going to flow down. Standard usage, 12 pounds for actual production. What this is saying to us, if I should use 12 pounds to make 1 unit, then if I make actual production, which is 60,000 units, how many pounds should I use? How many pounds should I use?
720.
720,000 pounds.
Pounds.
How did I get that? 12 pounds times 60,000. Can we all put that in our calculator, please, just to see that we arrive at 720,000 pounds?
Yes, sir.
Did we all do that?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now we have 720,000 pounds. That's what we should use. But what did we actually use in terms of pounds?
725.
We use 725. So even before we go any further to know what the variance is, we know that it's going to be adverse because we've used more pounds than we should use. Let me say that again. Standard usage. I want us to break it down, and each word I want us to apply figures to it. Standard usage. How many pounds is the standard usage? Let's go over that.
12 pounds in standard.
12 pounds. For actual production is the actual output. What's the actual output?
60,000.
I don't hear enough people participating.
60,000 units.
60,000 units. 60,000 units. So that's what? We're going to multiply those two to get what I should use. And that gives me 720,000 pounds. What did I actually use? I used
725.
725,000 pounds. So I know automatically I've used more than I should use, so it's going to be adverse. That's in brackets. And I'm going to multiply by what? The standard rate per pound. What's my standard rate per pound, class?
$28.
$28 per pound. Work that out and tell me what that gives you in terms of the direct material usage variance.
Sir, 140,000 pounds, $140,000 adverse.
$140,000 adverse. In my brackets, I have 720,000 pounds minus 725,000 pounds. That's in brackets open and closed. And then I'm going to multiply it by $28 per pound. And when I do the maths, I get $140,000. Remember my note, variances are measured in dollars, and they must be either adverse or favorable. The only time we don't write adverse or favorable is when we have zero variance.
Christian, what does this 720 minus 725?
Yes.
What does it represent?
That represents the direct material usage variance.
Okay.
That represents, we just calculated the direct material usage variance.
You said multiply the difference by $28?
By $28. Remember, the formula is standard usage for actual production, open brackets, standard usage for actual production, minus actual usage, close brackets, multiplied by standard rate per pound. The standard rate per pound is the $28. And that would give us not minus 140,000, but $140,000 adverse. We don't use negative signs in calculating variances. And some students in doing the question, they write dollars, pounds. That doesn't make sense. It is dollars and it is favorable or adverse. In this case, it's adverse. I want to pause just to invite questions.
Sir, I was going to ask about the negative, but you answered it still because I got a negative 100.
Yes, you would have got negative. But we could have turned the formula around. We could have turned the formula around. And giving you the formula, I could have said actual usage minus standard usage for actual production multiplied by standard rate per pound. I could have said that. It doesn't matter which one comes first and which one comes after. What makes it adverse is when my actual usage is more than the expected usage. If my actual usage is more than the expected usage, then my variance will be adverse. It doesn't matter which one comes first. Are you following?
Yes, sir.
Class, when am I going to get the feedback?
Yes, sir.
I'm hearing a few voices and I'm concerned, class. I want the full participation, and the sad thing is that I'm not able to see reaction on people's face and whether they understand it. And I'm fear that I'm going to get it on when the assignment results are out. I'm going to be hearing all sorts of things. And I said I don't want to hear it that time. I want to hear it before or forever. Hold your peace. Okay.
Sir, there's a question. We put the adverse in front of.
After you write $140,000, you write A, capital A.
Okay.
And you have the workings, but I'm taking you through it. I'm not just going to throw you on the workings. I'm going to take you through each of them. We have the solutions given to us as well. But I want us to go through the workings, and then you can look on the solutions afterwards. Okay, so that, but write down what you, write down as I speak, please. Write down as I speak. So that's the direct material usage variance. Next comes the direct material price variance. Direct material price variance. The direct material price variance is equal to, open brackets, standard price per pound direct material price variance is equal to standard price per pound minus actual price per pound, close brackets, multiplied by actual quantity of materials purchased. I want to say that again. The direct material price variance is equal to standard price per pound minus actual price per pound close brackets multiplied by the actual quantity purchased. Now I'm going to give you a little time. I'm not going to walk you through this one yet. I'm going to ask you to work out the direct material price variance based on the formula that I gave you. You may begin working now. How are we doing? Need a little more time?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Sir?
Yes, ready now? I am, if you are. Okay,
Yes.
go ahead.
So it's 5,800,000 favorable.
5,800,000 favorable. That's correct. Now let's enter into a discussion on why it is that. The standard rate per pound is 28. Do we agree that it's 28?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
That's a given. 28. What is the actual rate per pound?
$20.
$20. Now, how did we get that? We would have gone down to the actual information where we see 725,000 pounds costing $14,500,000. We'd have gone down there and we'd have calculated the actual rate per pound. We use actual information to calculate that. And so $14.5 million divided by 725,000 pounds would give us what? $20 per pound. $20 per pound. Now, we can begin to compare what's in the brackets. My plan was to spend $28 per pound, but I actually spent less. I spent $20 per pound. So even before I go any further, I've worked out in my mind that it's going to be favorable. Can we appreciate that, class?
Yes,
what
sir.
I actually spent was less than what I planned to spend. Good thing in terms of price. It might be bad further down the road because we have an inferior product because we use inferior materials. But from a price point of view, it's good. And then we multiply by the actual quantity of materials purchased. Well, we see there, 725,000 pounds. So in my brackets, I have $8 per pound. And when I multiply that by 725,000 pounds, I get $5,800,000. And that will be favorable. That will be favorable. Are we clear on that, class?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
No, sir.
Okay, that's who was Sophia?
Yes, sir.
Okay, well, we're going to have a conversation. What's the problem?
All right, sir. Where is the standard price, right?
Yeah.
The standard price is
Standard price per pound. How much? Sophia?
yes, sir. I don't know how we get the 20. Tell me again. I was
No,
lost.
the standard is not 20. Where do we find the standard information in the problem, Sophia?
In the actual output, in the actual information.
No. That's not the
The standard is 28, sorry.
Standard is 28, yes.
Which is the assumed price.
That's what we want. That's what we are planning for it to be. That's what we plan to spend, to pay for each pound of material. But what did we actually pay for each pound of material?
That is the part I'm never get.
Okay, go down to the actual part of the question about materials. What did it say?
It says what the output are just the materials. It says 750,000 pounds costing
725,000
pounds. costing 14,500,000.
Okay, so we want to know what did we pay, what did we actually pay per pound? How would we find that out?
Divide it.
Divide it or divide what?
Pounds by the cost.
Cost divided by pounds. Cost divided by pounds. So what would that be if we talk about cost divided by pounds? Dollars divided by pounds. What would that be? Talk to me, and then you can put the figures in the calculator.
Okay, me get it, sir. I got it $20 per unit.
$20
per pound, sorry.
$20 per pound. How did you get $20 per pound?
Sir, you divide the money by the pound.
Can you speak to the money, please?
$14.5 million. Divided by the 725,000 pounds.
That's right. And you get?
$20.
$20 or $20
per pound.
I expect accountants are precise persons, so I want it to be precise because that's how you're going to write it in the exam, and that makes the difference between 0 or 100. So I want to get you in the habit of that. We're not going through the torture chamber. I just want you to get it right. Okay, so that's how we got the $20 per pound. What else? What other questions you have?
That's where I was lost.
With the 20. So $28, that's the expected, minus $20 per pound, which is the actual. And because the actual is less than the expected, it's going to be favorable. And then we multiply it by the actual quantity purchased, which is 725,000. And that would give us $5,800,000, and that is favorable.
Sir, question.
Okay, that's Donna speaking.
Debbie.
Oh, Debbie? Okay, go ahead, Debbie.
All right. So initially, when you calculated the direct material usage, we got an adverse variance.
That's right. Yes, that's right. Maybe I've lost you.
Any better?
Say what you said. I missed it.
I was saying, I remember when we were creating the direct material usage variance.
Yes, it was an adverse variance.
Right.
Yes.
And we said that you made note that from the get-go, when we realized that we would have used we're supposed to use 720 pounds, and down the bottom said that we use 725 pounds. That alone would have started to get you to that point of thinking of it as adverse.
That's right, yes.
But then now the direct material price variance is favorable. I'm trying to figure out.
The principle about adverse and favorable is the same. In this case, the direct material price variance is favorable. Let's establish the rules so when it's favorable and when it's adverse. What are the rules, Debbie? When is something favorable and when it's adverse?
When the standard, when what is expected.
Yes.
Or the standard price, or
no, don't talk about price or user. Just tell me about expected versus actual.
When the expected is more than the actual, then it's favorable. And when the expected is less than the actual, it's adverse.
And the expected is less than the actual, it's adverse. That's right.
Right.
And that is a consistent principle that we use. Let's go back to direct material usage variance. My expected, I should have used, that's the expected, 720,000 pounds, but I use 725,000 pounds. I'm measuring usage in the brackets. So I use more pounds than I plan to use.
Yes.
And it was adverse.
Right.
As measuring usage at that point. When I get to the direct material price variance, what I have to bear in mind is that I'm measuring price. So what I'm measuring, that's what I have in the brackets. The price per pound actual and the price per pound expected.
So the two are not connected. The direct material usage and the...
No, but the two are not to be connected. The two are not to be connected. They stand on their own. Those two variances stand on their own.
Okay.
So what could account for that? Is it that maybe you got the product a little cheaper than you expected?
Yes, we're measuring price. We probably bought an inferior product. They probably brought an inferior product, and that's why it was less.
Ask about the connection, sir, because I remember when you were looking at the direct material usage variance.
Yes.
I was talking about using more than we had anticipated. I remember thinking to myself, what happened now in the material, in the price? Because I thought to myself when you said it, I said, but what if you got it at a cheaper price? It doesn't matter if you used more.
No. But you can't, when you're calculating the variances, you can't think about that, you know.
Oh, okay.
You can't think about that. You can't think about that. You have to just think about price. Don't make any link to usage in calculating the variances.
Okay.
That's another thing. If the question had asked you to explain the variances, then we could go on to that. But we're not there yet. We're just calculating the variances. Not seeking to ascertain any reason why a thing is so. So what I want you to do is to establish the consistency in the principle in all we've calculated so far.
Yes.
What's in my brackets? Price, because that's what we're looking at right now. And we're looking at expected price, which is $28, minus actual price, which is $20. So before we go any further, we can establish whether it's going to be adverse or favorable. What is it going to be?
Should need to be favorable because he's less.
Sophia, sorry. Debbie?
So I was just looking at the same thing that you spoke about, the brackets, measuring, calculating price for one and calculating usage for one.
Debbie, you're mixing up the two variances. Do not think about usage. We're calculating price. Forget usage. Otherwise, you're going to be confused.
Okay.
What is the formula, Debbie?
So it's standard price per pound.
Okay, pause. How much is that?
$28.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
Minus,
Go ahead, Debbie.
Minus actual price per pound.
Sorry. I'm talking to Debbie for the time being because she has expressed lack of understanding, so I want to work with her. And then I'll take anybody else who raises their hand after. Okay, so go ahead, Debbie.
The standard price per pound is $28.
Yes.
Actual price per pound is $20, which you get when you look at the actual figures given, which is the 725,000 pounds, costing $14,500,000. You divide that figure to get the $20 per pound.
Yeah.
So it's 28 minus 20, $28 minus $20, which gives you $8 multiplied by the quantity of materials that you actually purchase, which is a 725,000.
Mm-hmm.
And that gives you 5,800,000. That is favorable.
And you see why it's favorable?
Yes, yes, sir.
Okay. And so I don't want you to, while you're calculating price, don't think about material usage at all.
Okay.
Don't think about it at all. Okay. Just calculate it. I heard you saying something that I want to correct though, because that's the difference between 0 and 100. I heard you just saying $20 and $28 in the brackets. No, it's $28 per pound minus $20 per pound. If we leave off the per pound, we get 0.
Mm.
Multiplied by 725,000 pounds, not 725,000, but 725,000 pounds. We have the workings. Please have a look at the workings before you go to bed tonight and just see that everything accords with what we're going to need to get 100 versus 0.
So if you leave off the figure, the per pound in the working out, and at the end you put all that you need to, it still isn't correct?
You get 0, yes. Okay. Let's now move on to direct labor efficiency variance. I like to prompt my students before I tell them. I want to ask them to work out the direct labor efficiency variance. I'm not giving them any formula, except to say this: the direct labor efficiency variance is calculated along the same, using the same principle that we use to calculate direct material usage variance.
Repeat that, please, sir.
Yes. The direct labor efficiency variance is calculated using the same principle, not the same numbers, but the same principle that we use to calculate the direct material usage variance. You may begin working now.
Sir, what's the last part of that statement? Used to calculate the what?
I'm asking to calculate direct labor efficiency variance. And you're going to calculate it using the same principle that you use to calculate the direct material usage variance. The same principle, not the same numbers, the same principle.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
$125,000 adverse.
Do we agree with that, class?
Yes, sir.
Okay. What did you have in the brackets?
9.
960,000 hours.
Yes.
Subtracted from, so that's the standard hour that you wanted, but the actual hour that was done, the things were done in, that's 965,000. And you times that by the standard dollars per hour, standard dollar per
Standard
hour.
rate per hour, standard rate per hour.
Standard rate per hour, so that's 25, and then that gives you the answer of $125,000 address.
$125,000 address. That's correct.
Repeat what is in the bracket, please.
What did you have,
25.
You have one?
I messed up something there. I have the $25 minus, but I used 19 million.
19
I was
million.
trying to work out the hours. So I was doing
How did you, hold on, how did you?
965,000.
Sorry, say that again?
Yeah, I used that figure, the 19.3 million divided by 965. That looks like I'm doing something wrong.
Okay, so what I want you to do, Marsha, is go back and look at the principle that you use to calculate the direct material usage variance. Because I calculated the direct material usage variance using the same principle to calculate the direct labor efficiency variance. So go back to your direct material usage variance and look how you calculated that. What did you do?
I used, that was standard usage for actual production minus actual usage. That would be standard labor for actual production.
Okay, pause. Standard hours. What are your standard hours?
For actual would be 965,000.
Standard hours for actual production?
Oh, no. Where my head gone now? So, so it would be 16 hours.
16 is a standard.
And then
the
$25.
Pardon?
Right, so that is the 25 minus.
No. You didn't do that when you were calculating direct material usage variance at all. You didn't subtract your 28 from anything. Go back to your direct material usage variance. It's painful, you know, class, but I'm teaching you to think through. I could tell you the answer and we move on and we think that all is well, but it isn't. So we're going through the painful process of comparing. So Marsha?
Yes, standard usage for actual production, we deal with labor, right? So that is.
What's your standard usage? Answer it one at a time. What's your standard usage of hours?
16.
16. And what's the actual production?
The actual is 965 hours costing 19.3.
No, you stop a while. What is your actual production? You didn't produce hours. What did you produce?
So the 19.3 divided by the 965?
That is not what you produce. What is your
60,000 units?
60,000 units. That's
yeah.
right. So standard hours for actual production, what is that equal to?
So 6 minus. So the first one was 16 hours.
$16. What you're doing with that? 16 hours.
So the 25 minus the 16.
Let's go back to direct material usage variance. What do you have? Give me the formula. Don't tell me anything about labor. Give me direct material usage variance formula.
That is standard usage for actual production, right?
What's your standard usage?
For actual production.
What's your standard usage for the materials?
That's 12 pounds.
12 pounds. What's the actual production?
The actual production is 60,000 units.
That's right. And what did we get?
So it's a 60 by 12.
That's right. And what is 60 by 12?
720.
Okay. Yes.
Yeah, 720.
Minus.
Minus is 725.
That's right. Times.
Times our standard rate per pound, which should be, it will be standard per hour, which will be the 16.
Which will be the what?
The 12, sorry.
What are you calculating? What did I ask you to go back to calculate?
The direct material usage variance.
And what did you write down? We spoke about it, I gave you the figures. What did you write down?
It's 12 minus 60,000 times 12.
12 minus 60,000, that's what you wrote?
In the bracket, yeah, 12 in the bracket minus 60,000 times 12. That don't make no sense.
12 minus 60,000 times 12. That's what I said, class? Let me just check, because I owe you an apology. Class?
Oh, it's 16 minus 12. That's all?
Class?
Yes, sir.
What did I say? I probably need to offer an apology to the class if I said that.
Said about what, sir?
About direct material usage variance. What did I say?
So you said standard usage for actual production minus actual usage times standard rate per pound.
And I spoke about brackets, don't it?
Yes, sir. So in the bracket is standard usage for actual production, open bracket, standard usage for actual production minus actual usage, close bracket.
And then multiply by standard rate per pound.
Yes.
That's right. Mm-hmm. Yes. So I didn't say anything about 12 minus 60,000 times 12. I didn't say that. What I said was 12 times 60,000 units, 12 pounds times 60,000 units. And that gave you 720,000. Minus the actual pounds, which is 725,000 pounds.
Oh. So that's adverse 5.
Mm-hmm. And then I multiply that by what?
by the 12.
That's what I said. What did you take down? All I'm asking you to do is to look at what you take down, you know, for direct material usage variance.
Oh, times the 28.
That's right.
Oh.
So can you know, based on that principle, what would your direct labor efficiency variance be? Are you there?
Yes, sir. So the standard usage for actual production in this case would be the I'm not so sure, sir. I don't know what happened to me this evening. I'm not clicking at all.
Standard usage. What are the standard? What's the standard hours?
It's the standard hours is 16 hours.
That's right. What's the actual production?
965 times the 16.
Oh, gee, no. Read. We're not reading. What is our actual production? Read the question.
The 60,000.
60,000 is the production. It's the output. So what you're going to do with the 16 and the 60,000?
Yeah. So 16 times the 60,000 minus.
Work that out first. One thing at a time. Work that out first, please.
960. Are you gonna minus the
Wait a minute. Can we learn to speak in the way that you're going to write it in the exam? You're going to write 916. There's students who actually write 960, you know.
So 960,000 hours.
That's right, yes.
Minus the actual, which would be 965,000 hours.
That's right.
And you multiply that by the number of units, which would be the 60.
That's what you did when you worked out. You multiplied it by the number of units when you worked out the direct material.
By the $28, so by the $25 per hour.
That's right. That's right.
Oh. My brain is sleeping. Thank you, sir.
Okay, let's take the formula down, please. The formula for direct labor efficiency variance is standard hours, open brackets, standard hours for actual production, minus actual hours, close brackets, multiplied by standard rate per hour. Let me say that again. The direct labor efficiency variance is equal to standard hours for actual production minus actual hours, close brackets, multiplied by standard rate per hour.
Sir?
Yes, go
The
ahead.
question was, this is Nodian, standard hours for actual production, could that also be expressed as like the expected
That's expected,
hours?
of course.
Okay.
It's expected. Let's interpret that. Let's interpret that. It's the same principle that we use to interpret materials. What it's saying is that to make 1 unit, we expect to use 16 hours to make the 1 table. And for each hour that we use, we expect to pay $25 per hour. Let's move down to the bottom. And we're going to look at direct labor. We made 60,000 tables, and we took 965,000 hours to make that's the actual 965,000 hours. And the 965,000 hours cost us $19,300,000. The 60,000 units or tables or chairs, we took 965,000 hours. And those 965,000 hours cost us $19,300,000. That's how we interpret it. So if each unit should take 16 hours, how many hours should it take us to make 60,000 tables? That's 16 times 60,000, which is 960,000 hours. 16 hours times 60,000 units. And that would give us 960,000 hours. That's what we should take. But guess what? We took more hours than planned. We took 965,000 hours. We took more hours. So we know it's going to be adverse. And what we're therefore saying, 960,000 hours minus 965,000 hours, that's in brackets, open and close, multiplied by $25 per hour up here. And that should give us $125,000. Adverse or favorable, class?
Adverse.
Adverse.
Adverse, because we've used more hours than planned. Class, we're going to move on now to the direct labor rate variance. If it is okay with you for me to move on, the direct labor rate variance. And we're going to look to see, all I'm going to say to you is that the direct labor rate variance is calculated using the same principle, not the same numbers, the same principle that we use to calculate the direct material price variance. The direct labor rate variance is calculated using the same principles that we use to calculate the direct material price variance. You may begin working now.
Sir?
Yes. Who is on the floor? Donna?
Yes, sir.
Go ahead.
4,825,000 favorable.
Okay, I hear you. I hear you. I don't know what the others might say.
Can you repeat that, Donna?
What did you get? Don't answer to repeat it. What did you get?
Sir, it's the same as Donna's.
Hmm?
Sir, it's,
Who spoke a while ago? A gentleman spoke.
Oh, it's Giovanni, man. I got 4,825,000 favorable.
Giovanni, suppose you wanted that salary. What did they go in the interview and say?
Dollars, sir.
What do you say? Let me hear you call that as your salary.
So it's 4.800 and
Giovanni, I wouldn't pay you that, you know.
4,825,000.
No, I would pay you. No, I would pay you.
Yes, sir.
So you're not struggling to call it now.
Yes, sir. I realize what you say, no, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, so I hear from 2 persons and we have 600 students in the class. What happened to the other 598?
sir, that answer is correct.
That's Debbie, Katharina, Lacey, I'm not hearing from you.
Sir, I just responded. I got the same figure, 4.825.
4.825. That's how you're going to write it next week when you do the mid-semester?
Next week?
Comes like a thief in the night, you know. Comes like a thief in the night. But we talk about that towards the end of the class.
Sir, I'm gonna ask if you could go over it. My internet had gone out. I didn't hear what we were calculating.
Then?
I'm gonna ask you to go over it because my internet went out. I didn't hear what you were calculating.
No, we didn't do any calculations. All I said was that your direct labor rate variance is calculated using the same principle as your direct material price variance. That's all I said, and I asked the class to calculate it. We haven't gone through the workings yet. You hear what I'm saying?
Yes, sir.
So then, what we're saying is that the direct labor rate variance is the standard rate per hour minus the actual rate per hour, all of that open and closed, multiplied by the actual hours worked. Now my standard rate per hour is what, class? $25 per hour. And my actual rate per hour is $20 per hour. And my actual hours worked is 965,000 hours. But my actual rate per hour is less than the expected rate per hour. And therefore, I expect expect that my variance would be favorable? The answer is quite rightly $4,825,000, and it's favorable. $4,825,000, and it is favorable.
Too fast.
Did I go too fast?
Yes, sir.
Take a formula down for me, please. Standard rate, open brackets, standard rate per hour minus actual rate per hour close brackets and we're going to multiply that by the actual hours. Did we get $4,825,000 favorable?
Working it, sir.
Pardon?
I'm working it.
Oh, you're working. Did we get that, class? 4,825,000 favorable?
Yes,
okay.
Sir.
That's the direct labor rate variance. Let me go over that again. Standard rate per hour, that's $25, minus actual rate per hour. Our actual rate per hour, we go down to the area where we have the actual information. See it? And we take the dollars and we divide it by the hours. $19,300,000 divided by 965,000 hours. And that gives us $20 per hour. $20 per hour. And then we multiply that by the 965,000 hours. And that gives us $4,825,000. And this is going to be favorable because in the brackets, what I plan to spend, $25 per hour, is more than what I actually spent, which is $20 per hour. That's why it's favorable. Now, class, we want to move down to the variable overhead efficiency variance and variable overhead spending variance. Class, do you see just below total cost per unit of $1,536,000? Are you seeing there? We see the words just below it. We see overheads are absorbed on the basis of direct labor hours. Overheads are absorbed on the basis of direct labor hours. What is the significance of that statement? It is now saying that our labor hours will be related to the variable overheads and the fixed overheads. So we have some space between the words variable overheads and the dollar sign. Let's go up to the top where we have our standard information. And we have variable overheads blank, and we see 480. And fixed overheads, and there's a space, and we have 320. We have to fill in that space, class. So when we see the words overheads are absorbed on the basis of direct labor hours, whatever the direct labor hours that we have, we're going to write it back beside variable overheads. So we're going to have 16 hours. But at what rate? What rate, class?
Sir, the rates that we just found above, so the actual and standard.
We're dealing with the standard information, so we're going to have 16 hours beside variable overheads. But at what
$30,
rate?
sir.
$30.
Pardon?
$30, sir.
At $30 per hour is correct. Because to find the rate per hour to be the 60, we're going to have 480 divided by 16. So guess what? We're going to write that in the space. 16 hours at $30 per hour. Write that in the space, please. Now, I could have written it in, but the students complain and say I rob them of the joy of calculating. So they say that I mustn't write it in. One year I wrote it in and I reported me to the principal and said I made the exam too easy and robbed it of the challenge. So I've learned from that never to do that again. So you won't expect me to write it in, but I'm guiding you in terms of how to fill it in. So do we understand that it will be 16 hours? And if we have 480 outside, then to get the rate per hour, it will be 480 divided by 16 hours. And that will be at $30 per hour. Did you understand that, class?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
And the difference at variable overhead, you said something about when we say overhead, it has to deal with hours. That's what you said?
No. If this statement is there about overheads are absorbed on the basis of direct labor hours, if you see a statement like that, then that's how you treat with it.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
That's why we highlighted that statement a while ago.
Okay. Okay, sir.
Okay. And similarly, it said overheads, so it also speaks to fixed overheads. And so what would you have in a line with fixed overheads? How would you fill that in?
16 hours at $20 per hour.
16 hours at $20 per hour. Whatever direct labor hours you have, it goes for variable overheads and fixed overheads. When I say overheads, I mean variable and fixed. Now, when you're writing the 16 hours beside fixed overheads, I hope you're writing it in, it will be at 320 divided by 16, which is $20 per hour.
Sir,
Yes, go ahead.
I don't know how you get the 30, sir. Where you get the 30 from?
You mean for variable overheads?
Yes, sir.
Did you fill in 16 hours?
Yes.
So at And then at the end, you have 480. How would you get 30 based on that? What would you do?
Oh.
Tell me, don't just say, oh, tell me.
All right, so it will be 480 divided by the 16.
480 divided by the?
16. Okay.
Sorry, I'm not hearing you.
480 divided by the 16.
480, I'm losing you. 480 divided by?
16. 480 divided by 16.
Okay, and when you do that?
Yes, sir.
Did
So
you
I was
get
looking
30?
down the bottom. I wasn't looking at the top.
No, man, I'm not at the bottom yet. I'm dealing with the top. The top block. Hello?
Yes, sir. You hear me?
Yes.
So it'll be 480 divided by the $16. $480 divided by $16 gives you 30.
That's right. $30 per hour. And what would you have for fixed overheads?
It would be $320 divided by the $16 again.
Yes.
And that would give me $20 per hour.
That's right. So then what would you write in the beside variable overhead? You write 16 hours at $30 per hour. Write it out, please. 16 hours at $30 per hour for variable overheads. And for fixed overheads, you'd write 16 hours at $20 per hour. Are you there?
Yes, sir.
And then we come down to the variable overheads. We come down to the variable overheads. And what would we have? There's a blank. The same principle going to be obtained, but we're now going to, because we're in the actual area, the hours that we're going to use would be how many hours?
965,000.
965,000 hours. So for variable overheads, we're going to have 965,000 hours costing 24,125,000. And for fixed overheads, we're going to have 965,000 hours costing 9,650,000. Now, class, I want us to calculate the variable overhead efficiency variance.
The 21st.
Pardon? Sorry, somebody started saying something and they stopped. I want to hear them. Hello? Have I lost you all?
No, here, sir.
Do you want to speak this?
Okay, we just went silent a while ago, so I wondered if I lost you or you lost me. But are we clear that we're going to have for variable overheads 965,000 hours costing 24,125,000 and fixed overheads 965,000 hours costing 9,650,000?
Yes, sir.
Now,
yes, sir.
Variable overhead efficiency variance is like, listen, The variable overhead efficiency variance is like calculating the direct material usage variance. We're talking about principle now. It's like calculating the direct material usage variance or the direct labor efficiency variance. We filled in the information so we can proceed. Calculate the variable overhead efficiency variance. And then I have something to say to you, or maybe I should say to you now, when you see that overheads are absorbed on the basis of direct labor hours, we are saying that we're in a very manual environment. We're not using a lot of machines. It is labor intensive, our operation is labor intensive. So what this means when we say overheads are absorbed on the basis of direct labor hours, it means that most of our overheads, they're incurred because of the presence of labor and labor hours. That's what that means.
Okay.
Okay, you may begin working now. Let's just say we have another 3 hours of class.
Sir.
Yes, I'm giving you time. You ready now? Are you ready now?
Yes, I think so.
What says the rest of the class? Are you ready? Or do you need more time?
Yes. More time.
Okay, I'm prepared to give you more time. We're not rushing. We have another 3 hours of class. Are we ready, class?
Yes, sir.
That's 1 out of 600 students. Belinda Ward, are you ready? Chanel, Natasha?
Yes, sir.
Antoinette, are we ready?
Yes, sir.
Okay, what did we get for variable overhead efficiency variance? Before I give you the formula, what did you get?
Sir, $150,000 adverse.
$150,000 adverse is correct. Let's take the formula down. It is standard rate per hour. Standard rate per hour. Minus actual rate per hour. Sorry. Scratch that for me, please.
Or is it standard rate or
No.
standard hours?
No. Scratch that, please. Take that out completely. I lost it. We're calculating the variable overhead efficiency variance. So scratch what I said, and I'm going to start again. And let's hope that my head doesn't take me. It's the variable overhead efficiency variance is standard hours for actual production, open brackets, standard hours for actual production minus actual hours, close brackets.
Minus what, sir?
Standard hours for actual production minus actual hours, close brackets, multiplied by standard rate per hour. Did we get that?
Yes, sir.
That's the formula. So then, standard hours, what are the standard? Let's break it down. What are the standard hours? Don't rush ahead, answer me one at a time. What are my standard hours?
960,000.
No. I'm going to go on to actual production. What are my standard hours?
Okay.
16 hours.
16 hours, that's right. What is my actual production?
60,000 units.
I'm hearing you.
60,000 units.
60,000 units. So now, what is my standard hours for actual production?
960,000.
960,000 what?
Hours.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Minus actual hours. What's my actual hours? 965,000 hours. Open and close brackets. And what are we going to multiply by? The standard rate per hour, I said?
$30 per hour.
I didn't hear that?
$30 per hour.
$30 per hour. Now, before we work out the maths, will it be adverse or favorable?
Adverse.
It will be adverse. Why will it be adverse?
Because the actual hours are more than the expected hours.
The actual hours are more than the expected hours. That's correct. Now, what's my final result? What's my final result?
Variable overhead has a variance of $150,000, which is a loss.
Is that the word you would use? A loss?
Your variable overhead has cost $150,000 more than you planned.
Okay, that's right. But in writing it, you would then say 150,000 and what? What's the word you would use?
Adverse.
Adverse.
That's right. Yes. $150,000 adverse.
Sir,
Yes. Go ahead.
I'm not seeing the relation with adverse.
Okay. How many hours should you have used? Okay, but let me ask you. You're seeing the 150,000, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, good. So when calculation is not the issue, it's the rationalizing it that is the issue. Okay, not a problem. How many hours should we have used?
960, sir. Thousand.
And what did we actually use?
965.
So good thing or bad thing?
Oh, that's actually a bad thing, sir.
We use more hours, so it would be adverse.
Oh, okay, understood.
Okay, not a problem. Just before, okay, I want us to do one more. I can let you out early this evening. Let's just do variable overhead spending variance.
Sir, a question before you move on.
Yes, certainly. Donna, it's Donna. Debbie, go ahead, Debbie. Yes.
Do you put the negative sign before the 150, or you just write 150 and use write the adverse alone?
What do we do, class? Which one do we do?
Write the adverse.
We write the adverse. Hearing that, Debbie?
Yes.
Just a capital A. You don't write out the word adverse. You just put a capital A. Debbie, make a note.
I realized I was doing both, the negative and then...
No, not at all. You get 0 if you do that, Debbie. Just don't write negative, write adverse, and you write adverse capital A.
Yes.
And favorable capital F.
Thank you.
Okay, yes. Anybody else? Okay, then let us look at the variable overhead spending variance. Variable overhead spending variance. The variable overhead spending variance is like the direct labor rate variance, or the material price variance. You may begin working now.
The variable overhead, what, sir?
The variable overhead spending variance is like it's like the direct material price variance or the direct labor rate variance. It is like. You may begin working now.
Yes, sir. I think I'm finished.
Okay. What says the class? Do we need more time or are we finished?
Finished.
We finished? Okay, so we're working the variable overhead spending variance. What did we get?
So sir, I got 4,825,000 favorable.
Okay, that was that speaking? Was speaking? Antoinette?
Chanel, sir.
Chanel, okay. I need to hear some more persons telling me what it is. I don't know. Katharina, you've been silent all evening.
I got the same as well, sir.
Hmm?
I got the same answer as well, sir.
Tell us, Katharina, how you got that answer? How you got that?
Okay, sure. It was a standard rate per hour, subtracting the actual rate per hour and times it by the
standard rate per hour. What is the standard rate per hour?
25.
That was your standard rate per hour?
$25.
I see the 25, but is that standard?
Sorry, $30 per hour.
$30 per hour, that's the standard, and your actual is?
$25 per hour.
$25 per hour, yes.
And that's all in a bracket.
Yes. And you're multiplying
and
by?
That by the direct labor cost, the actual labor, direct labor hours, sorry.
Which is also the variable hours, no. It's also the variable overhead hours. Okay, so go ahead. What would we have?
Which is 965,000 hours.
Okay, and your response would be?
4,825,000 favorable.
And why would it be favorable? Tell me why it would be favorable.
Because the actual rate is less than the standard rate.
The actual rate is how much?
It's 25.
And the standard rate is?
$30.
That's right, so it would be favorable.
Right.
When my actual rate per hour is less than the standard rate per hour, the overall result will be favorable. That's $4,825,000 favorable.
Right, sir.
That's correct. I'm going to give you the formula for the variable overhead spending variance, just to cement what we've done. Then I'm going to give you the formula for the fixed overhead volume variance, and you're going to have to do that for homework. And then you're going to research the fixed overhead spending variance and work it out. So you have 2 workings to open with next week. And then we're going to do another problem. So I want to keep you busy and off the streets this weekend, because the feedback is that you feel you're not getting enough homework. So I want to fix that. Well, I tend an apology to you for not giving you enough homework. Okay, so the variable overhead spending variance is equal to the open bracket standard rate per hour minus the actual rate per hour, close brackets, multiplied by the actual hours. Standard rate per hour minus the actual rate per hour. That's in brackets, open and closed. And then we multiply that by the actual hours, which is 965,000 hours. And that will give us the variable overhead spending variance. Now the fixed overhead volume variance, take the formula for me, please, then you'll work it for homework. The fixed overhead volume variance is equal to, open brackets, budgeted output minus actual output, close brackets, and we're going to multiply that by the standard fixed overheads per unit. We're going to multiply that by the standard fixed overheads per unit.
Sir, did you say per unit?
Per unit, that's right. That's right. And then I'm going to ask you to do, you're going to research the fixed overhead spending variance. And when you have researched it, you're going to calculate it as well. And then we're going to do, for homework, we have another question called Lithuania Limited. Lithuania Limited. You're going to work that, and we're going to discuss the workings. So we're going to do that next week. You heard that? Lithuania Limited, which you have.
Yes, they have it.
Yes. So you're going to work that one.
Sir, could you repeat the second part of the homework?
Well, okay. You're going to be researching fixed overhead spending variance and calculating it in the question that we're working now. And then you're going to proceed to the other question, Lithuania, which you're going to work. And of course, don't forget part B of the question, which you're going to look at. What are ideal standards? What are currently attainable standards? And of these two variances, which one is adopted by most companies and why? You hearing that? Hello?
Yes, sir.
Okay,
Yes,
great. So that's where we are for today. But I'd like to close off by saying, do you have any questions that you want clarification on? That are clarification type questions.
Not for me, sir.
Okay, class, I'm going to close by saying, please review your work and come with questions. This is the hour to speak because the hour comes when nobody can speak. So these are my few words to you. Have a productive week and until such time.
Okay, sir.
Good evening.